Okay, welcome to our meeting. We have a great meeting planned, and I'm so glad you're all here. Glad to see Meg back in the saddle here with us. So, roll call. I've already written down everybody's names that's here. We're missing Tom Cross and I think Ted. Anyway, announcements. All right, I have two announcements and I may need to do explanations with these announcements. The Habitat Conservation Plan has been approved. Who knows what that is? Okay, so the Habitat Conservation Plan, oh, you do know. So that's critical. We had a sidewalk that was funded for Baywood Elementary School back when I first got on LOCAC, and it was designed and ready to go. And they went out there to start building the sidewalk and they found a snail. And they said, we can't build the sidewalk. And then the $250,000 they had set aside to build the sidewalk went somewhere else. Now with the Habitat Conservation Plan in place, if we want to build a sidewalk or a path or anything, we can, as part of that project, pay a fee that goes into the Habitat Conservation Fund, and it offsets whatever we do. So whenever we disturb ground, we have to pay a fee to this Habitat Conservation Fund, and then the project can move forward. We no longer have to worry about, is there a snail, is there not a snail, or any kind of habitat. That is huge for us because we can't build anything, and we don't have to do an environmental review. We don't have to count snails. We don't have to do anything because that money will go towards doing restoration and habitat in another location. The other thing that's happened just recently is the Los Osos Community Plan has been approved by the Coastal Commission. And this has been sitting at the Coastal Commission for years. And one of the things that's important about that is if it's in the community plan, it means that we can build it. And the multimodal path from Palisades to Doris is in the community plan. So we don't have to go and say, oh, please, county, put this project into our community plan and then try to convince them to vote for it. It's already there. So now we have that. The supervisors will be signing off on the community plan. The Coastal Commission made a few minor adjustments to it. Not anything that would affect us necessarily as far as our transportation. So the Board of Supervisors will be voting on that and accepting that, the community plan. And that means that we now have one more foundational piece for us to build that pathway from Palisades to Doris for the community. That is huge. And it has been such a, Trish can attest to this, how difficult it's been to do anything other than talk about a project without having those two things in place. So that's excellent news. Those are my announcements. Does anybody else have an announcement they'd like to make?
And Deborah, just as an add-on for that, Claire, who's our representative from the planning department, is going to talk to LOCAC and the community at our May meeting on all of the different changes that are going to happen with the community plan that the Coastal Commission has asked for. And then in June, the Board of Supervisors will vote on it.
Okay,
and they don't think there will be any issue about passing it.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So June meeting. Okay, great. Anybody else have an announcement they'd like to make? Comments? All right, let's move forward. Does anybody have a public comment for items that are not on the agenda? Okay. So you should have all gotten the Safe Routes to School survey from LOCAC. And I don't know if you had a chance to take a look at it and see the kind of information that's there. I'm going to pull it up and share my screen. Here it is. And so I asked them to send us only the San Luis Coastal because that's Los Osos. And what's interesting is that we had 51 people responding from Los Osos Middle School. We had 27 parents, right? We're talking about parents for the most part, responding from Monarch Grove Elementary. And then we had 26 from Baywood Elementary. So I think that's pretty good as far as responses go.
Yeah, I'll just chime in here, and I think it's significant, particularly when you consider the population of the schools. You know, Baywood at this point, my kids are there. I think it's 300 kids. So you're talking about, 10% of the student body. Like by contrast, San Luis High, we have 1,600 kids, and you can see like there's only 47 sort of responses from the parents. So I think like what this is showing is people are very focused on the schools that are, let's say, problematic.
And I would add too, Deborah, you look at, that's 100 respondents from Los Osos out of 353. So to Seamus's point, there's a high level of participation here. And
Yes.
concern, I guess.
Which is good for us because that means people are engaged on this subject. And then we have the grades. Looks like a lot of third graders, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade parents responded. So let's keep going here. So there's in Safe Routes to School, if you live more than 2 miles away, they don't expect you to walk or ride your bike. It's just like that. They don't even consider that as a possibility for you. But they, obviously do look at closer distance, and the older you are, obviously the farther you can walk or ride. So most kids are arriving in a family vehicle. That makes sense. Quite a few kids walk and ride their bike. So if you add those two together, it's over 100 kids go either walking or biking versus 168 that are being driven. Oh, I want that over there. Let's see. Same kind of question. I don't want to go through this too much. Has your student asked you for permission to walk or bike to school in the last year? Look at how many kids said yes. That's a lot. And then at what grade would you let your student walk or bike to school without an adult? I was surprised, 3rd grade, but it depends on how close you live, I guess.
And
Issues.
sorry, the only other thing I would just mention on that question 15, you can see, 66 people said, I wouldn't feel comfortable at any grade, right? Which I think is like should be a big red flag.
Yeah. It was interesting at the LOCAC meeting where this was presented. There was a CHP officer there, and she she said her husband is a parole officer. And she said, my kids aren't walking and biking to school, period. But I have to say that I don't think that was a reflection on the safe route to school. I think that was more a reflection of it's not a safe world out there. I'm a CHP, my husband's a parole officer. We feel it's not a safe world, and so we're not going to let our kids, walk or bike to school. And that's how I interpreted that comment from her. But yes, probably there are some parents that feel it's not a safe world, so forget about it. And then some people would just say it's not a safe route. The issues that prevent or make you less likely to allow your student to walk or bike from school. These are really key, and these are the ones we know. Speed of traffic. Let's see if I can click on this. No, let me go down here. Speed of traffic along the route, we know that is a huge problem. Safety of intersections and crossing, another huge problem. Amount of traffic, huge problem. Baywood is really bad for that. Also Los Osos Valley Road. Quality or lack of sidewalks or paths. So if we just look at the first 4, that's us. We have all of those. And then here are the comments, and I don't know if you took any time to read over. I tried to just find the ones that were Los Osos comments, but some of them were really right on target as far as, the issues we have at Doris, the issues we have on 11th Street and El Moro. Which of the following would make you more likely to allow your student? Okay, improved safety at intersections and crossings. Yes. Newer improved sidewalks. Yes. Newer improved bike lanes. Yes. Reduced speeds or traffic calming. Yes. Again, top 4. And then add in the presence of crossing guards, which I think that is also an issue. More great comments here. And I think what I talked to Jim about is printing this off and pulling out the ones that relate to Los Osos Valley Road and taking it with us to the open house next Monday. So let me just go past all this, because there's one that we get to at the end. I think this is a brilliant question. If you currently allow your student to walk or bike to or from school, are there any of the following benefits a factor? 84% improved health and physical activity. It's fun. This is such great information. How are we going to utilize this information? What is the best way for us to parlay this information or add it to other information so that we can get the most benefit out of it? Any ideas or suggestions?
I guess.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Meg.
I was just going to say, I definitely agree with you about bringing the information that pertains specifically to the, Los Osos area to that meeting that's going to be held at Monarch Grove.
Right. Seamus, go ahead.
I don't know, but I would wonder if there is money or grants attached to safe routes to schools, right? So that you can go to Public Works and say, look, this already has a dedicated sort of funding stream.
Yeah. So one of the things that happened at this LOCAC meeting for Safe Routes to School is there was a woman there. Her name is Helene, excuse me, Helene Finger, and she is a Cal Poly director. And she said at the end of the meeting, if anybody wants any help writing active transportation grants, get in touch with me. So she reached out to me on LinkedIn, and she and I had a conversation yesterday, because obviously we would very much like to have help writing grants. And I explained to her our situation. We looked specifically at the walking, biking path between Palisades and Doris. And she suggested that there might be another way of, instead of active transportation, she said, there's money there, but they're a little harder to get. But there is a betterments cycle that she said we could apply for safe routes to school. And so she sent me the link, and I actually haven't had time to really go in and look at it. Let me see if I can just tell you what it's called real quick.
Deborah, is that through Caltrans?
Yes,
Okay, yeah, I looked into that way back.
you
And
did.
yeah, and there is a cycle, and you've got to hit it in the right cycle.
Right.
And it's really critical. The application process has to be done very timely.
Yeah. Let's see if I can. I'll just pull it up on my. Hold on a second. I'm gonna stop sharing. Let me pull it up because she sent it to me in an email. Give me 1 second. So it is Sustainable Transportation Planning Grants. That's what it's called. And I'm just gonna go there, and it is the 2024-2025 Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant Application. So it would be a grant to do a plan. So that would be the next step for us is, so we have the concept, we have it's in our Los Osos community plan, but now we need to have a plan and a design. So I will have to go through this application and see what the deadline is and see what's involved. But Trish, didn't we have somebody who could possibly do grant writing? Tara's daughter? You're muted.
Yeah, she might be able to help us, but she's got a full-time job. So it would just be on the side if we had questions.
So we need to find out the details, obviously, which I will do, about this grant, and then find somebody to help us write it. Jim?
Is it possible to apply for one or more, apply for more than one sustainable transportation planning grant at a time?
I don't know.
Because don't we have more than one area that we'd like to get planned?
Yeah.
And
I mean, if we just look at Safe Routes to School, we have Baywood and we have Monarch Grove.
But Deb, we also found out we have Wellsprings with 160 students that we didn't know they had that many students. So we have to stop saying 2 and say 3. We have 3 schools that, are kindergarten through 8th.
Yeah, wishing well. Yeah.
And Lums.
Yes, Lums. But so tell me about Lums, because I've walked all around there, and they have the tunnel, and they also have a very good crossing light. So I don't feel, and they're isolated. They don't have traffic going around their school. So I don't worry so much about them. But in terms of actual projects, definitely Los Osos Valley Road and definitely Baywood, I see as being worthy of putting together some sort of grant application.
but one thing I would say, Deborah, is that around Los Osos Middle School, the speed limit is 50 miles an hour through that section, except when the lights are flashing and it's, schools coming in or out. And it's difficult to discern sometimes when it's when, right? When there's all kinds of kids, but sometimes on the tail end of the morning, if you're going through there, you may not be able to discern. So I think to Seamus's point, Los Osos Middle School has some good routes, but is also, it's kind of a dangerous location next to a road with a speed limit that's too high for that particular area.
Well, there's no bike lane there.
And there's no bike lane. No, there is bike lane. There's a class 2 bike lane.
Oh, there
The,
is.
the other thing I
Yes.
would say about Loams is, yes, the immediate area around Loams does have good routes. But remember, Loams is pulling kids from Morro Bay and all over Los Osos. So if you had to go from, where I am on Mar Vista to the middle school, right? That's a very bikeable distance, right? It's probably 2 miles or less. But you're talking about crossing LOVR, you're talking about crossing South Bay Boulevard. Like those, even for a 12 or 13-year-old, that's not necessarily very safe.
Yeah. So I had a mother who had a middle schooler, and he rode his bike to school. And I said, how does he get there? Because I think it was like on Lilac, right? So she told me his route. And so he would go the residential streets till he got to Palisades, and then it was very tricky crossing Palisades, and then they'd get up to the shopping centers and they'd go through the parking lots of the shopping centers until they got to like Mountain View or something. So that's how they would wind their way through, because there was no safe route. Good point. Thank you for reminding me that.
And I will say, I saw one of the comments from one of the parents in terms of what would, sort of make them willing to allow their kid. Somebody pointed out, Baywood now with the bilingual program is drawing kids not just from the neighborhood, but from all over Los Osos. So, my kids are in Monarch's catchment zone, but they go to Baywood. And I think somebody mentioned, like, we need to make sure there's a route from Monarch to Baywood so that kids who are making that sort of walk or bike or whatever it is can actually get there safely.
Good insight information there. Thank you.
Also, the kids that are bused from Monarch Grove to I think they go to the high school, but possibly the middle school as well. When they get off the bus, generally they're walking to get home. So, it depends on where they're living, but it could be quite a distance.
You're talking about coming over from the high school?
Mm-hmm.
You bust over from so they stop at Monarch, but they also stop at Baywood.
Oh, okay.
They drop off at Baywood. I don't know if they drop off at Loams.
I think they pick up and drop off. I know they pick up Baywood kids and drop them off at Monarch. I would assume they do the same for the high school and the junior high kids.
Yeah. Yeah, bus drop off. Let's write that down. Yeah, the need is great. Those are all really good points, and those should be in our grant application, right? We should be talking about all of that. What else can we add to this conversation?
So I wanted to make a comment about the Doris to Palisades, but I don't know if that's the subject that you're talking about specifically right now or in general.
We can talk about it. Sure.
Okay. So I've thought about this a lot, and the difficulty is going to be from Pine Street to Doris. I mean, it's a given. That's going to be a really difficult section because the street's not wide enough. You've got setbacks and all sorts of issues. And I'm wondering if we may want to approach the project in a slightly different way, going from Palisades to Pine. And even though that's not optimal, at least that portion would get done. And then maybe there's a way to kind of work in another section of it to get to Monarch Elementary.
Mhm.
But if we try to do the whole thing and the plan just gets the kibosh because of those properties, it would be really unfortunate to see the whole thing kind of not, progress because of that. So just a thought.
That's a really good thought. So,
Sorry, I have a quick question. Rosina, I think, is the one. After, like, so from Monarch to Pine, I think it looks just like a gravel road. It's certainly not one that cars travel very frequently or very fast on. And so I sort of wonder, because I agree with you, it's clearly like that's the sticking point is Pine to Doris. But I wonder, if actually what we should be talking about is kind of Rosina all the way across to Palisades
yep,
to bypass that whole section.
yep. So this is something that we've pursued. Now let's back up. Let's go over here for a minute. So we're talking about Palisades. No problem coming along here. This is county owned. Okay, let's see. All the way to Broderson, we can get there easily. And then where's Pine? Here's Pine. Rosina is a gravel road. However, it's a private road. And it's got a signs posted, no walking, no biking, private road. People do walk and bike there, but I don't know that we could put a path in without getting an easement. So the question is, can we get an easement? The story, and this is secondhand information, so I can't, verify that this is accurate, but the story that I understand is that the people who live on that street wanted the county to come in and take it over and pave it. The county didn't want to incur the cost of paving that street. And so they declined. And so I don't know if the county vacated control over that, which may or may not mean they've given up all easements. But that is why that sign is posted there. The property owners were like, okay, fine. And we're just going to not let anybody come on our street. Now, there is on right here is a facility that's owned by Golden State Water. It is a nitrate removal facility. And I would be willing to bet you that there is a utility easement here on Rosina. So it is possible that we might be able to get a path to come through here. And I agree with you. This could be a problem solver because we could get to here to Broderson. Now, when you get to Broderson, this piece of property, and I think it's 5 acres, is owned by a developer, and the consultant that's working with this developer actually contacted me because I'd been talking about this path on Los Osos Valley Road. And he said, well, what is it exactly you would like to have there? And I told him. And he said, well, does it have to be right along the road? And I said, no, not necessarily. And so he was more interested in maybe having it wind through the property. Well, that would be even better because then we could get to Rosina a little bit easier. So I don't know. Pine Street's not good. To go down, we'd have to connect with Rosina here. I think part of this is paved and then it turns into gravel here. And then it gets paved again.
And now Fern is paved all the way up.
Oh, is it?
Fern is now paved all the way to Rosina.
Yeah, that just happened.
Yeah, maybe a month ago, something.
Yeah, a few months ago. I mean, my dog and I now, we come up Fern to catch Rosina to come back up to Cabrillo. So
Fern is a great little street. It's such a quiet street.
mhm.
People often walk in the middle of the street there.
Yeah, it's very safe.
You can walk and bike there safely.
And off of Skyline though, too, there's an easement off of Skyline and Fern that actually goes all the way to the golf course. It goes all the way to Sea
Yeah.
Pines Golf Course. And
Well-
it's a dirt easement that you start on Skyline, and it takes you all the way over to the golf course, but it's not this one. You have to juggle up. I'll find it. It's not showing on this map, but I'll find it. But there's a great easement that goes behind all of these houses, and it takes you right to the golf course that I think we could incorporate too for a safe route from, let's say, Sea Pines concerts back over to Pine Street, because that easement goes the whole route.
Right, but you can see Rosina is ideal.
Rosine is a great one.
It's really
And it's
ideal.
not that-
It gets us
there's
all the
not
way
that
over
many-
to Broderson.
Yeah, there's not that many owners for us to talk to. We could go door to door.
Mhm.
And see. I think the first thing we need to do is find out, is there an easement through Rosina so that we might have some leverage there? If there's no easement at all, then we're really going to have to just sort of like ask, please, please. But that would solve the problem. I know, Meg, you had talked about in the past, and this was something when I was talking to Helen, and she was looking at this. She goes, well, why don't you come up and go on Woodland? And I said, well, it's hard to get to Woodland. If you're riding a bike, you could probably justify going up and around and down. But if you're walking, you're probably not going to do that. You're probably just going to walk here.
And I would say, like, we're talking about little kids, first and second graders crossing. As soon as you push them to Woodland, they're crossing Los Osos Valley Road, which anywhere other than Doris, I think we would all agree is not a good.
It's not safe.
Terrible. It's terrible. This section here, Alexander to Pine, my understanding, this mother clued me in. She goes, there's a lot of activities that go on here at the church. And then there's a lot of activities down in Baywood, like karate and stuff like that. So the parents who live up here come down Alexander and they want to turn on Pine because that's right how you get to Baywood. And there's a big backlog of traffic here of people. These people are trying to turn left and these people are trying to turn left this way. And she says it's the biggest mess. And hopefully that's one of the things that we'll be able to talk to the county staff about on Monday, because that combination of intersections it's not functioning.
They may need to put a light there because it's gotten so busy on Los Osos Valley Road. It's
Mhm.
very challenging to turn right or left off a Pine.
So if you
agree.
go ahead.
No, I really agree with that. It really is difficult.
But if you put a light, then traffic will stop. And then what? You'd
Well,
have
you'd-
a signal going to
Yeah,
turn
you'd have
right.
a three-way signal.
Right. I'm just saying you'd still have these people trying to turn right onto Los Osos Valley Road so they could turn left on Pine. And how are they going to get out there if traffic is backed up here? You know what? I'm not a traffic engineer. I don't need to figure it out. Somebody else needs to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean,
Need to say this is a problem.
I did see on the mapping website, there were a lot of comments sort of asking about a roundabout there, right? Which would potentially mitigate at least the left and right turn on and off of Pine, as well as the left turn from LVR onto Pine. I agree it doesn't solve the Alexander issue, but it solves sort of half the problem, maybe.
Well, my understanding, and I'd have to go back and look at the circulation projects that the county out. They have, and I'll look it up and I'll send it to everybody. The plan, as far as the county is concerned, is to put in, to widen the road. So you have a turn lane and you have a through lane. So we know when you put in extra lanes, that through lane now becomes a freeway. Those people go faster because they can, because they don't have to wait for somebody to turn anymore. So here, coming in towards Pine, you would have a turn lane, so you would turn onto Pine and the traffic could go through. Here, you would have a middle turn lane where you would wait and then you would turn. So they would have, you know, they would add an extra lane there. That's my understanding of what they want to do. And I'll dig that out and I'll send it to everybody so you can take a look at it.
I mean, I guess I would just say, like, at this meeting on Monday, I mean, I don't know. I don't pretend to speak for everybody, but my attitude is any talk of like adding lanes, widening LOVR, like all of these things is exactly opposite from the direction we should be going in, right? Like the goal is to slow down traffic, to provide more, you know, resources for pedestrians and bikes. And, you know, I get they're traffic engineers. Their answer is widen the road, add more lanes, whatever. But like, I just think like we have lots and lots of documentary evidence of the community saying very loudly, you need to slow cars down on LVR, you know, and that needs to be kind of our North Star rather than, you know, whatever other stuff.
Well, and if
That's perfect.
they want to build things, build bike lanes and paths.
Right. Well, and I think that's where this survey, the Safe Routes to School survey, comes in. Because it, as you say, it's loud and clear. What people are going too fast. I've heard stories of cars approaching Doris, and, you know, parents are waiting to turn right on Doris, and a car will just go around, go right through the intersection, even with children standing on the corner. There's not a lane there, but they're doing it anyway. It's just kind of craziness. So I'm in 100% agreement with you, Seamus, and I think we all feel the same way, that slowing traffic down here is a perfect example. Here, where Los Osos Valley Road turns into Pecho Road, and you can easily see, and Meg, you can speak on this because you live over here. When this road gets wide here, the traffic goes even faster. They blast. And God forbid you're here on Montana Way trying to cross the street. What's really interesting about here is if you're coming out of Montana de Oro and you're traveling down Pecho Road, the actual pedestrian is standing back here. You can't even see that person because the road kind of bends over here, but the traffic goes here. I'm going to take pictures of that so I can take that with me on Monday. So let's say you have a person standing right where the M is, because that's where the pedestrian crosswalk begins. There's no chance that you can be seen there.
Yeah, I think
right here.
I think that really begs for a blinking light like they have on LOVR over by Grocery Outlet. If you
and if you've seen those signs that they put out in the middle of a crosswalk that says yield to pedestrian, it's a state law. We need one of those right in the middle.
Yeah.
To slow that down, and maybe something to help the visibility here. We have a similar problem up here when we get to Rodman. There's a sign, it's not showing here. I don't know if it will come up. There's a sign, maybe it's right.
You can't
right
see
around
it through the
here.
tree, yeah.
It says Montana de Oro State Park, campground, blah, blah, blah. And it's a big sign. You've all seen it, right? Well, when the horses come out of Montana de Oro and they're coming up this road and they're standing here waiting to cross Pecho to get onto Rodman, because this is how they go back to the stables. They come here and on Madera to get back over to Seahorse Lane. Can't see them. They're completely hidden. And the people coming out of Montana de Oro are coming down. They're going fast because they're coming off this curve and they're coming down a hill. They have no way to see these horses or a pedestrian for that matter, if you're standing by that sign. And there's nothing here. There's not even lines in the road here. This is one of the most dangerous intersections. So, and I think I've mentioned this to you before. If I have, just stop me, because I go to so many meetings and I forget who I talk to. But if we were to do an equestrian crosswalk here, like it says in our Safe Track report, it will not trigger the ADA requirements. So it would not be expensive to do it. A button with a light, with flashing lights, so people could cross, horses could cross, and everybody could get safely across to the other side of the road, I think is what needs to happen. So we'll be talking about that on Monday as well. So the way this thing on Monday is going to work, I'm just going to move this back to the school. So the way this is going to work is they're going to have tables laid out in this multi-purpose room, and each table is going to be a different section of Los Osos Valley Road. So if you want to talk specifically about an intersection or a certain part of Los Osos Valley Road, you'll go find that table, and then you'll interact with a staff person at that table. And they will take your comments. I am going to be bringing not just my comments, I'm going to be bringing actual photographs of what I consider to be serious issues, like I just described to you. And so I welcome all of you to take that approach if you think that would be helpful, and get as many people to go to this meeting as as would want to. Any other comments? Anything to be added? Because that's all I have.
That was pretty thorough.
Thank you, Lynette. Yeah, well, I just felt those two things were really important, and we can start talking about next steps at our next meeting. I'll look into this grant application, find out what's involved, and sort of like try to get ourselves organized around how to make that happen. Because now we can really talk about funding.
So I do have one comment or question just to follow up on the comment I made earlier about the idea of proposing the bike path just to Pine to get it started. And I wasn't sure what the response was to that.
Anybody else want to chime in?
It's a good place to start. I mean, there's nothing wrong, nothing wrong with that, Meg. I mean, we need to take what we can get, but we don't want to lose sight of what we ultimately want as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So phase 1, phase 2.
Yeah, and I would say, like, building into Pine does not preclude creating a connection to Rosina if that works out, right?
Mhm. And I think to Tricia's point, if we have to put a group together and go talk to homeowners on Rosina and share with them the importance and some of this data, and the realities about how difficult it is to get a path along LOVR to Doris because of those houses and setbacks, whereas this, this shouldn't be that difficult.
Mhm.
Because the amount of traffic on Rosina is not even close to what's on LOVR.
Yeah, exactly. Trish and I are going to figure out who it is we need to talk to at the county to find out if there's an easement there that would allow a path. If there's an easement, then we should be able to build something. If there's not an easement, then, we'll have to come up with a plan B. But I kind of feel that a utility easement has to exist. Otherwise, how would Golden State service their pipeline?
Correct.
Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we can build something on top of it, but,
Well, they did on Pismo right over CSD's water line. So,
Mhm. And if it's just homeowners, you could have a one-way, or you could have a one-lane street,
mhm,
and you could have enough room for a class 3 bike path, right?
correct. Correct.
So,
well, if you walk Racina, you'll see that somebody's built up I wouldn't really call it a median, but it's sort of something that discourages anybody from even pulling into that street from the Pine
Mhm.
direction.
The only other question I had on Rosina, on the other side of Pine, I guess that would be the east side of Pine, that appears to be paved and I would assume maintained by the county.
Correct.
Okay.
Is it? Do we know for certain? It could have
paved
been
east of
paved by the
Pine.
homeowners.
No, I'm very sure that it was by the county.
It's just weird that the county just wouldn't do that one section.
But that's the way it is on a lot of these little streets. They have just said no. So,
Well, maybe we can get the county to take the road back.
well, we talk about them, we have to add that to our list of stuff that we need to talk to them about.
Which may or may not be possible if they vacated it.
Mhm.
All right. Any other comments, suggestions, ideas?
Good meeting.
Yep, very good.
Great.
Well,
Well, I appreciate all of you taking your time tonight. And I look forward to seeing you on Monday at the open house, and, we'll continue to push this agenda forward.
Sounds
Thank you,
great.
Deborah.
Thank you.
Great to see you,
Thanks.
Meg. Welcome back.
Thank you so
Bye.
much. It's good to be back. Good to see everyone.